But President Cyril Ramaphosa will be meeting with his US counterpart, Joe Biden, today. On the agenda will be health, infrastructure, trade and investment, among other issues. For more on how crucial this meeting is, we're joined by Dr. David Monyae, Associate Professor of International Relations and Political Sciences and Director of the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Dr. Monyae, very good morning. Thanks so much for speaking to us. It makes sense for President Cyril Ramaphosa to be having conversations, certainly with Joe Biden. After all, the United States is one of the largest trading partners for South Africa. What can we expect from this conversation?
I think this is a critical a turning point for President Ramaphosa to meet the most powerful leader in the world and a very critical role player in terms of South Africa's strategic interests. In terms of getting investments, I think that's what's core for South Africa, as well as ensuring that the United States play a critical role on other issues that affect South Africa, such as climate, investments across the African continent when it comes to infrastructure, dealing with issues of peace and security across our continent and other parts of the world.
Okay, I'd like to start off with the business side of things. There are close on 600 American companies operating in South Africa, so thereby creating a huge amount of employment. Now, we do know that the unemployment statistics, particularly where young people are concerned, are phenomenally high. Is this likely to be part of the conversation, and what is President Cyril Ramaphosa likely to push for in that regard?
I think we're going to see President Ramaphosa pushing for more investments in South Africa, with more companies coming and invest in different sectors of our economy. And there's the question of energy that we face with load shedding ongoing. I think the United States would play a critical role in assisting South Africa and also to advance its own interests in this country. However, for the United States also to open its markets, I think it will be good for our own traders to be able to get their goods into the United States under AGOA, which is coming to an end in 2025, and therefore there might be an issue from President Ramaphosa to ensure that it is extended.
Now, I like the idea of energy that you've raised, because it's obviously been a thorn in the flesh for South Africans for the last few years and certainly into the foreseeable future. Would you be aware of the President's team and who in particular would be spearheading that conversation? Is it an integral part of the conversation they're likely to have?
There was a statement out that there will be discussions on issues of nuclear for peaceful use, and therefore I think South Africa would get help from all countries, open up energy sources from solar to nuclear to all other sources of energy from United States, from European countries, from China, Japan, as well as Russia itself. It is important for South Africa not to depend on one country. I think for security reasons, you have to diversify countries that invest, particularly on a strategic commodity such as energy.
Dr. Monyae, now that we've gotten the pleasantries out of the way, let's talk about the thorny issues, or certainly potentially thorny issues. Russia-Ukraine war, the United States coming out a few weeks ago and almost seemingly to threaten those countries that support Russia. Now, we know that South Africa has taken a neutral stance, if you will, where this is concerned. Is this likely to come up? Is it going to be a sticky issue for the two presidents?
President Biden is more likely going to raise the issue. But I think by now, with the visit by the Secretary of State Blinken that came to South Africa and endless statements that are made by senior government officials, scholars, civil society, and people across the African continent, there is a cry coming that the United States should not push South Africa and Africa around. South Africa should and must have its own independent policy in terms of how it responds to global crisis. And the Ukraine issue is quite sensitive. South Africa is close to Russia, it's close to a number of countries, and it belongs to BRICS. And I think at this particular moment, South Africa has decided not to take sides, to encourage the warring parties to get to a negotiating table and resolve the matter. And more importantly, South Africa is also demanding that the United States play a critical role in the reform of United Nations to ensure that Africa and South Africa plays a critical role in decision making. So these are issues that will be discussed, but I doubt very much that if South Africa would change its policy.
Well, let's come to the issue of climate change and how the Western world has pledged, I think, something in the region of $100 million towards climate change on the African continent. We know that 17.5 million, I think, still remains outstanding of this amount. Is this likely to be part of that conversation? Will President Cyril Ramaphosa arm twist, if you will, or use this as a bargaining chip, use the opportunity to speak to President Joe Biden to push for this?
Indeed. The challenge is that the Western countries, they overpromise and underdeliver. They promise to assist countries through the transit to clean energy, but they're not delivering. As a matter of fact, the promises they made on COP26, they're not living them up to them. As we speak, Europe is reopening its coal mines, at the same time demanding that South Africa and other countries stop using coal. And therefore, I think what is needed is what is called the just energy transition, that South Africa has to transit to a clean energy in a much more responsible, with an understanding that massive number of people are employed in coal, given unemployment. Therefore, this has to be done gradually. If the truth is to be told, Africa hasn't omitted much. It's less than 3% of omission. And therefore, to demand for Africa to quickly move to clean energy without the new technologies, it's very unfair. It has to be done in a phasing way and in a just way, given the fact that the greatest polluters are the developed countries.
You know, I've had many conversations with the various experts on the African continent around the support that Africa needs, and certainly how the rest of the world reacts to that need for support. And what's been topical is the amount of support that Ukraine got for the Ukraine-Russia conflict versus the conflicts and the needs of Africa and the response to that. Now, whilst President Cyril Ramaphosa is the South African president and for all intents and purposes represents South Africa, do you get the sense that he might be carrying Africa on his shoulders and that he will push some of Africa's agenda once he gets South Africa conversation out of the way?
Indeed. He will be representing Africa. South Africa plays an influential role on the African continent. And South Africa and Africa need United States, given the fact that United States has a lot of military bases on the African continent. United States is a critical member of United Nations Security Council, and it contributes in terms of peacekeeping and all other areas, whether in trade, and the vaccine issue that we're talking. President Ramaphosa has been a champion on vaccine, ensure that Africa gets its own vaccines. However, United States never delivered. There was vaccine nationalism in the United States and developed countries. So these are some of the issues that will be raised politely, diplomatically, and United States will also push for its own interests on Ukraine and other areas.
My final question, Dr. Monyae, is around peace and security on the African continent. Now, many areas remain devoid of peace, or certainly have quite a fair amount of armed conflict. We've got Mozambique, we've got the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Horn of Africa, Mali, and all those places. What is President Joe Biden's message likely to be to President Cyril Ramaphosa, or the other way around, taking into account what you've just said, that the United States has many military bases on the African continent?
I think the message will be to encourage warring parties to negotiate, particularly the core areas, Ethiopia and Sudan, South Sudan, issues that are happening in Mozambique. I think you need more assistance from the United States to ensure that you deal with issues of terrorism. In Central Africa, Democratic Republic in particular, the United States is close to Rwanda as well as the DRC. I think the United States could play a critical role alongside South Africa and the African Union to encourage all players to be responsible and ensure that we stabilize the continent and concentrate on issues of development. Those are core issues that will be discussed, and therefore United States will be needed as much as Russia will be needed, China will be needed, and these are important discussions.
Professor, certainly appreciate those key insights this morning. Dr. David Monyae is Associate Professor of International Relations, Political Sciences and Director of the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg, and packing for us likely conversation between President Cyril Ramaphosa and President Joe Biden.